Joe Navarro again, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about poker tells, and especially about the kinds of things that we do as a result of a limbic reaction. You know, we talked previously about the freeze response and the flight response and the fight response. What's interesting is that whether we are holding very still, the freeze response, or we're in an argument and we have the fight response sort of going. For every kind of limbic response, whether it's freeze, flight, fight, we have what's called a pacifier. And this is very interesting. This is something I introduced into the literature a few years ago. And what I found was that anytime there's any kind of stress, we do something to relieve that stress. So in college where I teach, I often see college students, they raise their hand and I don't call on them. And so rather than the hand returning immediately back, what you'll see is this: they pacify. And we pacify in all sorts of ways. Now, this doesn't have anything to do with bluffing per se. It doesn't have anything to do with, let's say, lying. It has to do with how we deal with stress, both great stress and just a little bit of stress. So at the table, you'll see things like lip licking, right? That relieves stress. You'll see men who have beards stroking their beard or touching their face. Any sort of self-touching, self-soothing relieves stress. And it can be anything. You'll see people playing with their watch or playing with a phone or something. It could be whistling. Oftentimes we talk about walking through a graveyard and whistling. This relieves stress. Exhaling with puffed cheeks. You'll see someone go, you almost hit the car in front of you. Almost universally, the next thing we do is go, this relieves stress. So playing with hair, women you'll see sometimes they'll play with hair and they'll pull their strands of hair. This is self-soothing. Or we'll take our hands and rub them across our forelegs. This releases stress. Playing with chips releases stress, as does hand wringing, hand touching, facial touching, and so forth. Now, a lot of times we'll see people playing with their chips, or their feet are constantly jiggling or bouncing up and down. And one of the things that I tell people is, look for behaviors that are repetitive. If you see a repetitive behavior, it's a soothing or pacifying behavior. And so if they do it all the time, ignore it. The only time we pay attention to those is when it goes away. So if you've got a player at the table and they're bouncing that leg and it looks like a sewing machine all the time, they're just soothing themselves. This is how they deal with this normal stress of everyday life. Or you'll see them playing with their chips. Again, this is self-soothing. Or they'll play with something at the table, a rubber band or something. Anything that's repetitive, including vacuuming, is very soothing. But when we see it stop, then it has significance. Or if we see it increase. For instance, people who chew gum, that's a pacifier. But if it increases, it's because they're under stress. So just be aware that we have limbic awareness, limbic reactions, and for these, they are always followed by pacifiers. These little things that we do every day to help us deal with life, to help us deal with stress, and that help us to soothe ourselves and calm ourselves down.